if there's anyone that's particularly squeamish or doesn't like it when people talk about blood and stuff, then I suggest you don't watch this video because I'm going to be talking about my labour today. So my labour started on Tuesday the 15th of September 2015, obviously, at 1 AM in the morning. I got woken up by stomach pains, but it was not necessarily really painful. So they were like kind of twinges rather than pains. And I was coping pretty well with them, to be honest. I was laughing, me and my partner were laughing about it. We were watching Jeremy Kyle and it was all pretty relaxed. And then they intensified. I was laying in the bath and I was contracting and in pretty much active labour. Thank you. And it got to a point where I was like, okay, yeah, we need to go to the birthing centre. I remember it being painful and I remember it being slow to the birthing centre. But we got there for about 8:30, maybe a bit before then, I'm not 100% sure on times. And as soon as I got there, she checked me, the midwife checked me, and it turns out that I was 8 centimetres dilated with no pain relief, which is unheard of for a first time mum and a first baby. So my birthing plan was a water birth in the birthing centre, listening to 80s soundtracks and everything nice and chilled. So I told the midwife that was my birthing plan. She was like, yeah, fine. So we got into the water. Everything was calm. I was listening to 80s ballads. I can't really remember what ballads they were because I was obviously in pain, but I remember there being music. And the bath was running. It was a really nice warm bath. I had my gas and air, which was the main thing, and I had my partner feeding me bourbon biscuits. I had squash going on one side, and it was just really nice and relaxed environment, and I was just so relaxed, and I was like, this baby's gonna come in this relaxed environment. I'm gonna have my skin to skin contact and everything is gonna be awesome. And then things turned south very quickly. It got to about, must have been about 11, no, it must have been about 12, midday, and the midwife took me out of the tub and said she was going to help me break my waters because my waters hadn't actually gone at this point. So I was like, yeah, that's fine, she can do whatever. So she was going to break my waters for me. So I got out the tub. She did her thing by shoving her hand up there with a crochet hook, pretty much, and tried to break my waters. Eventually she got them to pop, and in my waters was blood, obviously, and meconium, which is baby poo ultimately. Normal waters are normally see-through or a little bit greeny, but not black and red. So that was a cause for concern because the midwife then thought that the baby had inhaled his own poo, which is dangerous. She called the ambulance and I had to be transferred to a hospital, which I was gutted because I wanted to have my baby at the centre when it was all nice and chilled rather than in a hospital bed laying flat. But it was out of my control ultimately. So the ambulance came, and at this point I was in so much pain and I was really scared because I didn't really know what was happening. No one was really telling me what was happening. I kind of lost my cool. So throughout the whole of the beginning of my pregnancy I didn't scream at all. When I was having the contractions, I just I was calm and collected and sort of collected myself and sort of breathed through them. But at this point I was terrified and I just kind of lost my cool and I was kind of screaming and then a little bit all over the place. The ambulance came, I got on the ambulance. This bit I don't really remember. So we got to the hospital about, must have been about 2-ish, and I wanted the epidural straight away because I just couldn't cope with the pain. I was actually fully dilated at this point as well. When babies normally come at this point, you normally push for about an hour and the baby arrives at this point. But my baby wasn't coming anywhere anytime soon. So I was fully dilated, I was in pain, I was exhausted, bearing in mind it'd been 12 hours since the pain started. So I just wanted the epidural, and I didn't really want an epidural at first. It was never in my birthing plan, but at this point I was so high on gas and air and I was in so much pain that I just was like, give me the epidural. And they tried to put in IV lines into me, so like cannulas to get liquid and try and hydrate me because I was so dehydrated before they could put the epidural in. and the midwife was getting really antsy. She was really mean, and I didn't like her at first, to be honest. She was really, really rude. She basically said I needed to stop on the gas and air. When that is your only form of pain relief, the last thing you want to do is give that up. And she just kind of took it away. But eventually I had the lines put in. It took so many different nurses and doctors to put in the cannula in my arms. I got pretty much needles in every single part that you could because my veins kept collapsing. Apparently one nurse actually came in and said, no, if you can't do it, I'm not doing it, and just sort of walked out the room, and which is a bit of a shock. Eventually they got a cannula fitted, and they were supposed to hook me up to some liquid, some fluid to hydrate me, but they forgot to do that. So when the epidural people came in, my sister and my partner, who were my birthing partners, said, doesn't she need to be hooked up to that, and that's the whole reason why we couldn't have the epidural straight away. And the midwife was like, oh yeah, sorry, and it was just like, okay. So they hooked me up. I have the epidural. I have not a mobile epidural, I have a full epidural, which was a cause of concern to some of the anaesthetists that were there, because the midwife made this call and she shouldn't have, or I don't really know, I was kind of a bit all over the place, but they kept questioning why I didn't have a mobile epidural. They tried to put the epidural in me sitting up, and bearing in mind I'm in labour, and they were like, you have to stay really still. I managed to stay still, but as they were putting in the needle in my back, my baby's heart rate dropped. This then caused every single doctor pretty much in the whole hospital to run into my room. The alarm was going off, it was crazy, all I could hear was people putting on their gloves, and it was all sort of really scary at that point. And then the baby's heart rate went up and it was fine. They put the epidural in me laying down instead of sitting up, because obviously I'm in pain, and the pain kind of vanished straight away. The midwife then decided for me to do some active pushing. So she was like, we'll push for an hour and see how that goes. So this is when I thought, sweet, this is when I'm going to see my baby. Bearing in mind I'm in the laying back position, which is the worst position to be in. My legs are in stirrups. It was the far cry from what I wanted at the beginning of my labour. So at this point though, I was just saying, I just need to get this baby out because his heart rate keeps dropping, I'm in pain, I'm exhausted, and it's just going terribly. So I pushed for an hour and nothing happened. The baby's heart rate kept dropping and I was exhausted. By this point it was about 4 or 5 o'clock, and then the doctors came in and they decided that they will prep me for theatre. This scared the living daylights out of me because this was not what I wanted at 1 in the morning, the previous morning. This is not how I had imagined this labour to go. Bearing in mind my pregnancy was so textbook up until the point of the actual delivery. So she basically said, we're prepping you for theatre. I'm going to get this baby out with a ventouse, which is a suction cup that gets stuck onto the baby's head and pulls them out that way, or forceps, which are basically salad tongs. And if that doesn't work, then we're going to give you an emergency cesarean. Which freaked me out because I never in a million years dreamed that I would be having a cesarean at the age of 23 with my first baby, bearing in mind I've been healthy throughout the whole of the pregnancy. So I was prepped for theatre. My partner came in with me. The theatre room, everyone was joking. It was very sterile. There was like 10 members of staff. I don't know what any of them were doing. I was laying on this bed completely flat, which is like the worst position ever. And I got my legs put in stirrups. I got some more epidural put in because there was going to be some stuff going on down there that I wasn't aware of. They started with the ventouse and that didn't work. It kept slipping off because his head was swollen. They then used the forceps, and to use the forceps I had to have an episiotomy, and I also had 2nd degree tearing. After about an hour, so it was I went in about 6ish. After about an hour he eventually came out, got pulled out and then shoved on me. So I had this little baby, bloody cruddy baby, shoved onto me, and I didn't even realise because I couldn't feel anything, and I was like, oh my God. So he was born at 7:08, and I didn't leave the theatre room until 8 o'clock because they had to stitch me back together. He came out screaming, and he came out healthy, and yeah, and then I had my son. So I am now officially a physical mummy, which is weird, and it's nearly 3 weeks on and I'm still finding it a little bit strange. So I'd like to introduce to YouTube my son, whose name is Max, which is short for Maximus. So here he is. He's a bit stunned by the lights. Hello, there you go. So there you go, that's my son who caused me 16 hours of pain and suffering. Totally worth it. So that was my labour story. Yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna go now and I'll speak to you all very soon. Bye for now.